Welcome to another episode of Myths and Stories! Tonight we're covering part 2 of the history of the Cabal. Last time we covered kind of like the early days of the Cabal, what the Empire was like. Very, I hesitate to use Klingon-ish, but we'll use it. Why not? And we covered all the way up until we covered a lot of Calus stuff, and in our research in Myth's research, Myth has realized that Calus is very central to a lot of this stuff. So this may seem like a Calus themed episode tonight, but I promise you it's not. It is still the history of the Cabal. It's just Calus is so ingrained in there that's how that's going to seem. So Myth, where did we leave off last time?
Yeah, so with our last episode, we talked about the very early beginnings of the Cabal, all the way back in the era of Lead, it was called, with the very first Emperor Acreus, and kind of the mythos surrounding him that the Cabal, told each other, kind of a bedtime story for children feel. We talked about some of the nuances between the stories that Cabal told amongst themselves and kind of our translations of them, and how our translations were not necessarily inaccurate, but were very dumbed down versions, kind of missed some of the lesson in the stories. And then we talked about the Cabal going from growing into a empire, growing into this this system spanning civilization, and then the rise of Calus and how Calus changed a lot of the ideals and ideas of the Cabal society from the militaristic with the Praetoriate to more of a Renaissance kind of, valuing debate and valuing art, in addition to having like coliseums and things to provide some of that, more violent entertainment still.
Yeah.
But was very much skewing more towards the idea of being a very opulent race of people. And we left off saying that either Calus is not an accurate narrator of the state of the empire he ruled over, and or there were people that were not happy.
Are you telling me that dictatorious leaders will paint themselves in whatever the hell light they want to paint themselves in?
Maybe just a little biased, just a little, yeah.
yeah, maybe a lot biased.
Maybe a lot, yeah. Whatever the case may be, there was a plan hatched to usurp the empire and remove Calus from power, and that was kind of the teaser that we left it on last week.
Yeah.
So this week we're going to talk about that actual event, and kind of the repercussions of, and what that ultimately meant for Calus specifically, as well as the Cabal as a whole. So,
all the Cabals that still have balls,
and one that doesn't,
and one that doesn't. I was thinking of a neat rhyme the other day that was like a palindrome rhyme, and it was like, but it wasn't Gaul, so I couldn't use Gaul, but it was like Gaul was the only Cabal with balls to cut the balls off a Cabal named Gaul. So that was a little tongue twister that I came up with.
It's a fun tongue twister that is completely inaccurate to the lore.
Completely inaccurate. Like none of that. Like parts of those are true, but not in with itself. So yeah, just ignore it. It was just cute.
Without further ado, let's get into tonight's episode then. So we're starting with an event called the Midnight Coup. And the Midnight Coup, as it sounds, was a coup d'etat that was perpetrated by Gaul, as well as the consul, and a number of conspirators that were very close to Calus. Just kind of showing if this many people this close to Calus were willing to rise against him, maybe there were some things going on that he neglects to inform us of in some of his self-narrated pieces during the last episode.
I definitely think we're getting some Et-tu Brute stuff happening.
A little bit. And actually, Gaul is very much considered. So Gaul was picked out of the Colosseum by Calus and given leadership of the Red Legion. And as we will see tonight in some of the descriptions between of Gaul by Calus, he viewed him essentially as a son. So it was a very big betrayal for Gaul to turn against him in this way. I think it's important, before we get to the actual coup and what happened during it, is to kind of describe the major players, because all of these people had a very important part in the uprising against Calus and where he ended up, as well as some of the actions he took afterwards. So I'm going to go through the conspirators. These are the descriptions of these people from Calus's point of view, and all of these descriptions are coming to us from the Destiny 2 Vanilla Collector's Edition lore book. We're going to start with the bodyguard, Lictor Chayotet, the Emperor's protector. Chayotet the Uncleft, my eternal companion, my shield and my trust. Whatever good I did, he owns a piece of it, for I did it all under his protection. How many bullets he took for me, how many poisons and piercing thoughts. When I spoke to the people of Dauis and told them I had repossessed the wealth and plunder of the Praetorian elite, it was Chayotet who stood by my side. The legions could have bombed our hides to leather, but he stood. He loved me through all the hard times, O friend. How could my happiness turn you against me? How could you grow disgusted with my joy and revelry? How bitter to lose a friend because your friendship was made only of shared pain. On the dark day, Chayotet led the soldiers into my house. Let the soldiers plunder my collections, feast on my larders, and shoot down those who tried to save me. Chayotet said he was doing this in the name of the man I'd once been, but I knew he was jealous of the emperor I'd become. Chayotet must die.
So this is a very close confidant of Calus. Like he's talking about how he shared in the pain. Like that, the only reason why we're here is because this guy shared in it, and why would you betray me? Like what? Like out of everyone that could betray me, why you type thing? Like
yeah, like the only reason he was emperor, or it sounds like the only reason he was emperor, is in part because of the protection he had gotten from this this right hand man, this bodyguard, and so to directly go against your duty, especially in a a society that values honor and being upholden to what you're supposed to do, as the Cabal are, like that's a pretty major thing.
Yeah. Well, and so to me, I keep drawing all this stuff to Roman like references, and so this whole time I'm always going to ask: is this guy Brutus? Is this the if we think of Calus as Caesar, is this bodyguard his Brutus?
I think you could have some argument that you could consider them that. However, I think our Brutus is the most direct comparison that we're going to find. Is probably going to be Gaul himself.
Okay. Well, I guess at the end of the day, technically nobody's Brutus because Calus.
Right, it's not exactly
alert.
the same.
Spoiler alert: Calus is still alive. We think.
Well, we know.
Yeah.
So the next conspirator is the scientist freeborn Atzat, Scion Savant.
I was going to say you said freeborn, so this is a
freeborn.
This is a scion that's been granted freedom, basically. Like,
mm-hmm.
We used this last time too, and I don't know if this is the right terminology, but equality amongst the Cabal people.
I don't think the Scions have ever had true equality.
Sure.
I think freeborn in this sense is meaning, not indentured to, but from a like societal standpoint, they're still very much treated as useful tools, but inferior on a like political level.
Sure, like lesser mortals, basically.
Kinda, yeah. So freeborn, although is a step for scions, is not necessarily doesn't mean like, oh, scions are great now, or scions have this great life now.
Cabal may not have been the nicest people in the galaxy. I'm just gonna say that.
Who knew?
Who knew? Your entire like way of life is about warring and subjugating other worlds to do what you want them to do for you. Yeah.
Who'd have thought they may not be super nice?
Might not be the best role models or anything. So yeah.
So scientist freeborn Atzat. Centuries after we destroyed the Scion's clairvoyant Axa machine, word reached me that it had been rebuilt on the moon of Brand. The Evoket General sent her ships to bomb the moon. In my imperial forgiveness, however, I stopped her. I asked myself, who but a true genius could reconstruct the Axa? Who but a scion who craved the Axa's power to see the unseen? Surely we could use that mind. I invited the builder to join me at a feat in her honor. She was called Atzat, freeborn scion, and she glowed with the power of her thoughts. She said, "Is this not Calus's new empire, an empire of achievement? Can't the scions grow fat in thought as you grow fat with power?" I said, "You have a deal. I name you Imperial Dreamer, and you will have all that you need. All of us are stronger when we join hands in song, Cabal and Scion, Sindhu and Clips, Arkborn and all others. If only I could have sensed her thoughts, as she so ably sensed mine. When I moved to free the indentured scions, I threatened Atzat's superior status as a freeborn. She joined the conspiracy against me. She used the Axa to transmit messages in secret, the military's plans for their coup. Atzat must die. She can sense the hostility and focus of an assassin. Somehow, you must reach her undetected. Approach her in joy and trust, as I once did. Then you may have hope.
So this is kind of interesting. Like, I guess I've never really thought about it until just now, where you stated it. Atzat Otzot? Otzot.
Atzot.
Oxa. Otzot. Oxa is the machine. Otzot
Yes.
is the scion.
Yes.
Because that's not confusing as shit.
Right. Yeah.
So the scion can totally they can read thoughts. They're psychers. They are like every thought that Calus is having while talking with this scion is freely seen in the scion's mind. But it's a one-way street, right? Like unless the scion allows Calus to see what's going on in her mind. So that's kind of weird to me that Calus would openly allow this. And I guess that's part of the reason for the Cabal wanting to keep the scions as a subjugated tool as opposed to an equal, because that psychic ability is so one-sided. Like it's
yeah. I would not be surprised at all if some of the reason they've been, subjugating the scions is out of fear. Because if you had scions on an equal political standing as, a Valus or something, but the scion can read your thoughts, like, how do you win against that kind of political opponent?
Yeah.
And Calus here seems to show that there is a difference between a freeborn scion and a normal scion who is still indentured.
Yes.
And Atzot is freeborn, and he at least is attributing her assistance in the coup to not wanting the other scions to be freed of indentured servitude, because she has power over them as a freeborn. Again,
almost like
we don't know if that's true, but
right. Well, and I think of it as her. She's like the because Calus is very Calus by calling off the attack on the Oxa machine. Why did they have to be so close? Calus calling off the attack on the prediction machine. I'm just going to call it that. That makes so much more sense.
That works, yeah.
Shows that he has at least some understanding of like the importance of this machine, and that
absolutely,
even just having access to it via a scion is still more valuable than having it completely destroyed, because it's already been destroyed once, and this scion was either intelligent enough, and we talked about this last episode, we don't really know what came first, like chicken or egg, Vex tech or this thing. So we don't know if it was they stole it back from the scion or stole it back from the Vex, and then the Vex were able to see the end portion of it and create it to be stolen back. Yeah, so it's interesting that a scion, because is it stated that the scion, like this lone scion, rebuilt the entire thing?
It's implied. It doesn't specify if they single-handedly built it or if they were just the ones that were smart enough to redesign it and then had other scions assist with building it. But they're the only ones really mentioned. Bold.
Yeah. So I mean that's again, that kind of shows that these scions really are that they are of a very high intelligence level.
Absolutely.
And now for some reason I'm thinking that the boss at the end of the strike, that Oxa and Atzot are mentioned. No, that's
Kargan.
Kargan,
that's the end of Insight Terminus.
Yep. Yep. Never mind then.
I think was knew that information lied in the Vex network and was trying to get access to how did Atzot make an Oxa machine to do the same.
Sure.
But we thwart that attempt.
Because remember, kids, looking into the future is bad. It's not bad per se. I mean, Bruno sees it in the future, and everyone just yells at him for it, and then we don't talk about him.
No. This is not a musical. No,
okay,
but
continue.
But the next conspirator here is someone that we have not really heard of before. Someone we have not heard of before, and this is the celebrant Adile Molly Emily, the Everjoy.
All right, Bungie's just making up words now.
This is what Calus has to say about Molly. Ah, Molly the Everjoy, chief of festivals. He named himself for the grand wallowing flats of Molly Myth, where bathers snack on floating oysters and the rising tide carries sweet flowers to tickle the hide. As those waters soothe the body, so Molly soothed my empire. How the children love his holidays. How could a year go by without the tusking challenges, or the resignation day championships, or the qualifiers for the all-imperial whale kayaking? If only Molly hadn't soothed the people after my exile. If only he'd let them rise up in rage. But that's Molly, isn't it, my brave champions? He just can't bear to see the people angry. Unhappiness leads to uprising, and uprising leads to bloodshed. And few know this, but Molly was once the Colossus of Brunth. As a loyal soldier of the old corrupt Praetoriate, he drove the Republicans into the sea. He massacred innocent citizens for the crime of supporting me. He renounced war forever and devoted himself to joy and revelry. Oh, Molly, what happiness you brought to us all. Now the Everjoy celebrates false happiness. He paints a smiling face on the grim legionary helm. Molly must die. Let his death come on a day that he himself invented.
So the first part of that, where it's like the bathers with floating, I'm literally picturing a bunch of Cabal in like a hot tub with like
I kind of think that's what they're going for.
that's what it is, right? And but the food is literally just floating in there with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's like
just hot tub in an oyster bath, I guess. And you just reach down and crack one open.
Weird. Because it even talks about like it's tickling the hide and stuff. I'm like, what is happening here? I mean, I know we're drawing some Roman parallels, but is this a recorded Cabal orgy happening right now? Is that what we're talking about?
I love the all imperial whale kayaking.
What even is whale kayaking? What even are you using a whale as a kayak? Are you kayaking for whales? Like what are these holidays? I want International Whale Kayaking Day to be a holiday on Earth now. That's what I'm going to petition for next.
Oh, that's yeah. I mean, it sounds like they have a good time at least.
I mean, Calus is all about this, like, live life to the fullest. And so to have like a, what would you call this guy? The chief holiday maker guy, like
essentially, yeah, chief of festivals is his title.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see that he used to be a colossus under the leadership of the old Praetoriate, and he actually fought against the supporters of Calus originally, as Calus was trying to come to power. And when Calus did get to power, apparently this Molly character, swore off war and decided, no, I'm just going to dedicate myself to making people happy. Which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Good for him.
But the fact that he continued to make people happy after Calus was out of the picture apparently means he has to die. At least in Calus's eyes. So you know.
I like the reasoning. Well, he's got to die. I mean, that's literally like all of these entries are obviously from Calus's point of view, and Calus is like, these people need to die. Like, screw this guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
and it's interesting. So all of these entries are presumed to be broadcast out to anyone that'll listen. Essentially, like Calus.
So these aren't like just like journal entries.
No, these are messages being broadcast out that are essentially Calus's like bounty board of, hey, I will reward you if you eliminate any of these people and give me proof.
Now I'm thinking of it as like a Bungie bounty type thing. Like, hey, we'll give you 500 glimmer and 200,000 XP if you kill this guy for me. Really? Can I get some gunsmith materials with that? No. You get XP and glimmer, and that's it.
That's it.
Oh.
See, for me, in my head, I'm seeing this as like a bounty coming in on the bounty board show from
oh god on Bebop.
From Bebop, yeah, Cowboy Bebop.
How we doing, partners? Well, we got us here a big old bounty going on these guys. Yeah, that Oxock guy is a real son of a bitch. Yeah, that's what's happening. Now that's canon.
Yep. So all right, the next one here is the general.
Yeah.
the general, Evocate General Umanaroth, Primus of all legions. This is what Calus has to say about this one.
Have we seen any of these characters in game at all, or have we interacted with any of these entities? Be it a strike boss, a raid bot, anything,
no.
any type of.
The only one that we have heard of in game up to this point is Atzot, and that's specifically like we've heard of them, but we have not met them. I'm fairly certain.
Right. And it's just a quick mention that even Zavala's like dismisses it instantly, like it doesn't matter, just get back here. Like,
yeah,
we found all this information about this stuff. Like, you don't want us to investigate? Like,
nah, it's fine.
Nah, it's fine. It's fine.
However, the three after the Evocate General are all characters that we have seen and interacted with in game.
Okay.
But yeah, so the General. My dear companion, let me confess this. To know true joy, one must also experience true sorrow. I am sorry for Umanaroth, the worst mistake I ever made. In ages past, the Emperor ruled alongside the Praetoriate, the degenerate and venal military aristocracy. The legions made an iron wall around them, and the people suffered so that the legions could grow. I cast down the Praetoriate. I gave the legions the right to speak as citizens, but I still needed armies, and armies need a leader. So I chose a combat veteran to serve as the Evocate General. I thought I could show Uman the great works and delights of our Cabal, and thus teach her that war is only a way of protecting happiness. But she would say to me, the war is all there is. All this, the crowds, the triumphal architecture, the gardens in the sky, everything I'd built. This is just logistical support, she would say. I watched her. I wasn't a fool. But when at last she betrayed me, she acted through a simple consul and his protege. Damnation upon the name of Gaul. Umanaroth would consign my people to an eternity of fear and strife. She would pillage and tax my people in the name of their protection, and yet it will be the soldiers that she protects. Umanaroth must die. Her flagship's full hull is adamant. Her weapons crack planets, and she stands ever vigilant. For Uman sees terror all around her. Machines who can eat her worlds, barbarians who corrode her frontiers, wizards who thirst for her soul, and worse. Uman is afraid of the outside. See that her doom comes from within.
Interesting. Yeah. No, this is.
So
Yeah.
we talked a little bit about her before, when we were discussing how Calus kind of set up the political structures of the Cabal after his rise to power.
Right.
So the person he put in charge of all the legions was very much of the old mindset of like, we are a warring race. War is what we do. All of this other stuff just is window dressing.
Support.
Yeah.
That was what I did love that. Like, yeah, she would just say this is all just logistical support for war. Like, I mean, okay, technically, yeah, okay, I got you, but yeah, no, it's interesting that he would put an old guard. But I guess he sees the need for it, right? Like he says, even though we're kind of giving up our warring ways, we can't just like do away with our army. Like we can't just be completely defenseless. So to put a combat veteran in the highest position there of the military makes sense. But yeah, and there's one entry there's one section there that it talks about wizards would have her soul. Is he talking about hive wizards?
He's absolutely talking about hive wizards.
That's mind-blowing.
Obviously, the Cabal knew about the hive by nature of what Calus just said.
Right.
They learned about the hive actually from the Oxa machine. Calus got visions from the Oxa machine of the rise of Oryx, essentially.
No shit.
And presumably, this is not stated anywhere, but I would assume that if the Cabal as a warring race were ever expanding their empire and the hive were ever destroying everything, they may have met at one point or another. An interesting connection here as well. So this is from the biography for Uman from Destinypedia, and they specifically reference chapter 5 of the lore book Empress, which is entitled New Gods. But apparently it's implied that Uman was originally fearful and then became obsessed with the hive's philosophy around sword logic because it meshed so well with her philosophy of like always be at war.
Yeah.
And we know that Keitel has mentioned in the past that when Shivu Arath attacked Torbottle, it was with the assistance of Savathun from within.
Well, and that's literally what Calus is saying. Like, may your death come from within.
If we're to draw some comparisons here, I think it's very likely that Uman is the one that Savathun corrupted, who then led to the eventual downfall of Torbottle via Shivu Arath. I found the chapter referred to in the book titled Empress. Absolutely, Uman is the one that opened the way for Shivu Arath to take over Torbottle. Uman was essentially worshipping Shivu Arath.
Gotcha.
So Uman essentially forced Keitel to kill her and use that death as a ritual to open a portal for Shivu Arath to send her armies into Torbottle. Like a
throne war portal.
Yeah, an ascendant portal. Yep.
Holy shit. Now we've got Cabal practicing darkness. Right, get the hell out of here.
Yeah. A much more important character in the grand scheme of the Cabal than what this, single entry would allude to.
Yeah. I mean, you're literally talking about a Cabal using darkness. Like that's a big deal. Like I'm kind of amazed that this is like I don't want to say this is the first time I've heard of it, but yeah, this is the first time I can think of a Cabal using light or dark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, okay, there's Gaul, but Gaul, yeah,
It doesn't really
we'll
count.
get there. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get there.
So, but for the time being, she's just a conspirator in this coup d'etat against Calus that he has named as someone that needs to die. The next conspirator that he names is Keitel, the Princess Imperial. And he has this to say: "Oh, beloved, what have you done? I only wanted an heir who would love what I love. Sweet air and song and the grand work of architects. Feasts and ecstasies, worlds of delight. Are these things not best? Was I inattentive, child? No, I was not. But the more I tried to show you what I loved, the more you turned away. First those games of war and conquest that you played with Uman, then the pressure armor you took to wearing at home, as if the palace were an alien world and the revels toxic. I was so happy when you became a star pilot. I thought you'd see our great Cabal in all its glory and variety and understand the joy of peace. But when you returned to Torbottle, you would hide away with Uman, whispering about threats that gather on our frontier. I could have stopped the coup. You alone knew of my special arrangement. When I raced to my throne to give the signal, you were there. You sat on my throne with the signal in your fist, and when I reached out to beg, you crushed the bone in your gauntlet. Father, you said, I will not be weak. You mistook my joy for weakness. You understood nothing of who I am. So my dear daughter must die. Only in flight is she ever happy. Only when she's happy can she be reached. I could never reach her. Perhaps you will." So there's an interesting thing here that I don't think is talked about anywhere directly. So Calus had something that he believes would have stopped the coup. It was a special arrangement, he calls it. And when he raced to his throne room to get this signal, Keitel was there and knew about it. And it says, "You crushed the bone in your gauntlet." Almost sounding like this signal, this thing that he thinks could have stopped the coup, was this bone. Which makes me think one of two things.
Ahamkara.
Either Ahamkara bone or worm.
Well, shit.
Though I don't think... I think Ahamkara makes more sense.
I think you're right, just because of the thought that, like, we never look at a worm. Well, I guess there is the familiar that Savathun had that still whispered to her, but it wasn't even, well, no, because it wasn't even the worm that was whispering to her, right? It was just the darkness. It was the witness that was whispering through the worm to
Through
her.
it, yeah.
So we don't really have any evidence of a worm having any type of abilities past death. Whereas Ahamkara, we absolutely have thousands of... I mean, Eris Morn's been walking around the whole damn universe with an Ahamkara bone in her.
Yeah.
Just making wishes, just, hey, la 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 la. No, that's bad, Eris.
We do,
cut
though.
That shit out.
We do have record of a worm having sentience after death, and that is Zol, as part of the Whisper of the Worm gun. Nokris mentions that, like, he can still sense Zol's essence or soul or whatever, but, like, he can't connect. Like, Zol is actively avoiding him after the events of Warmind. So, like, there's still something there enough to be identified as Zol. So I do think the
Maybe they
worms
do.
have
Maybe they do have
that
it.
same
Yeah.
ability as the Ahamkara or something similar. But in this instance, I think it's more likely it's an Ahamkara bone. Now, what kind of signal that would give, I don't know. Maybe he's just means find it and like make a wish on it.
Sure. Like wish it. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I think. I think of it as like an Ahamkara like panic button, right? Like that's his like
Yeah,
Secret Service, come get
which
me, save me. Pcha.
brings about a lot of questions. Honestly, like how long? If this
Yeah.
is an Ahamkara bone, we're gonna make some big assumptions here. But if we assume this is an Ahamkara bone, how long has he had it? And how much of his conquest and downfall are due to wishes he's already made?
Oh shit.
You know, if he wished for the power to become emperor,
Yeah.
and in the way Ahamkara do, they're like, okay, you'll be emperor and you're gonna have all this power to do what you want, but others are gonna covet your power.
Oh
You know,
shit.
or he's gonna wish to, you know, be able to spread his revelry to everyone in the universe. Like, okay, but you're gonna have to go through some shit to meet the darkness to then like have the ability to do that, and you're not really gonna be you anymore. Like all of those would be very Ahamkara,
That would be.
you know, monkey paw wishes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man,
So it
maybe.
makes me wonder.
But that's an interesting thought too, that by crushing this bone, so the bone of an Ahamkara can still has some sort of magic or whatever you want to call it in that bone, but the dust of said bone doesn't necessarily have the same level of power or whatever. Because
Yeah,
by Keitel crushing it, like saying, you know, if we are assuming that this is an Ahamkara bone, by crushing it, that like takes away all ability to do anything. You know, like
yep.
that's like the end of the line for that one. So that's an interesting thought there.
Well, when we were doing our Eris Morn episode talking about the Great Hunt that Eris took part on with Ikora, Ikora was destroying the bodies, the remains of the Ahamkara that had been
Right.
killed. I think for the same reason, because
Yeah.
apparently physically destroying the bones, at least beyond a certain point, render them no longer able to affect things.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. If he really does have if that really was an Ahamkara bone, and that has a lot of implications. That has a lot of
Mm-hmm. Now we don't know for sure
tomfoolery.
that's the case,
I'm
but
going with it for now.
it seems like it's likely.
Hashtag prove me wrong.
Oh, don't venture
Oh,
into
shit.
that.
Shit.
You'll be asking for it. No. So the next conspirator, we only have two left here. The next conspirator is the consul. And
one last thing about
yep.
Keitel. It talks about wearing a pressure suit. Is this the same suit that like we see all Cabal wearing?
Presumably,
Because that's what I thought.
When
That's what I thought that they were wearing.
Yeah, when you pop the head off a Cabal or you pop the helmet off a Cabal, like you get that pressure release from where the helmet used to be. So I'm assuming all of their armor is, you know, fashioned in this pressure suit way.
Well, and it's God, I wish I could remember where the entry was. But I swear there was an entry talking about how like that's jet fuel that's laces their suits.
I think it was a quest where the Ghost was talking about that the fluid that they use to cool their suits was the same like chemical structure as our jet fuel.
Yeah.
I would have
Which
to
is
find
also
exactly
Glimmer, right? Like Glimmer also has the same.
But,
for some reason, I'm thinking that Glimmer had the same.
I don't
Maybe
remember
I'm crazy.
that. Yeah, I think Glimmer is just programmable matter. Like Glimmer.
Okay, like
engrams are similar in that way. Yeah.
The what do they call that? The fifth state of matter.
Yep.
matter in a data sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't remember there being a direct tie between Glimmer and the Cabal coolant, but
Okay, good. Then I'm crazy. We'll just go with
yeah.
that theory. No, that's no longer theory. That's fact. Zor's crazy.
Well, there you go. There you go.
There you
Source
go.
crazy. Case closed.
Case closed. Boop. Okay, so
Yeah,
next.
so the console is up
Yeah.
next. Calus does not have nice things to say about the console. Who'd have thought?
Well, and this is the replacement of the console is the replacement of the entire Senate, basically, right?
So the console is the singular Cabal that he exiled to the desert, who was previously the
Oh.
head of the Praetoriate.
Right. This is Mr.
So
Water
Gaul, this is Mr. Water News. Gaul, was found by the consul and essentially raised by him, out in exile before going to the Colosseum and kind of making a name for himself. Gaul, that is. So in a lot of ways, Calus blames the consul for everything that's happened, and especially for how Gaul, came to be a traitor. So his description of the consul is this: how small a man must be to seek greatness in the shadow of others. How pitiful the man who raises up a great soul and cowers behind it. I will not dignify this leech with a name. Think of him as a roach who scurried out from the ruin of the old Praetoriate. He had grown fat on the scraps they fed him, the wealth and influence and favor, and when I took his scraps away to enrich my throne and inspire my people, he wanted them back. Like any roach, this consul has a low cunning. He found the perfect vessel to carry his poison, a lonely, crippled orphan child. Into that child he poured his jealousy, his cruelty, and his desire to see the great brought low. Imagine his venomous whispers. Look at how happy they are. Look at how they revel and thrive, while we crack our hides in the filth and pine for days of fear and gunfire. Had the child only escaped him, had little Gaul only crawled off the heap where he was found, so much might have been saved. How terrible the man who sees an orphan as a hollow weapon, and who loads that orphan with the munitions of his revenge. How pathetic the man who wishes only to be a fat parasite again. The vile consul must die, and I sentence him to death by his own weapons.
Yeah, he don't like him.
No,
Calus
not
don't
at
like
all.
this guy. He don't like him. Nope, not one bit.
He blames him for everything, really. The
I
others
mean,
are co-conspirators, sure, but
right.
it all started with the consul.
I mean, and you think about it, like in his logic, he's kind of not wrong, right? Like he exiled this guy, like he cut his balls off, exiled him in a sea of white sand. Like, I mean, like Calus was done with this guy, and he was convinced that this guy was dead. And then to know that this is the one that found the, orphaned albino runt Gaul, and then like, I mean, he has nothing but hate and ill feelings and ill tidings to pour into this weapon. Like to weaponize Gaul like that. Like that's, yeah. I mean, that's basically he just needed someone, and to have and how kind of poetic justice is that, right? Like Cabal are all about the biggest, the baddest. Like Gaul was literally thrown away in the trash. Like
Right.
he's a runt, he's an albino, he's garbage, and to have that as your downfall, have that as your as the the ultimate usurper, like that's poetic justice if I ever heard it.
Mm-hmm. So the last co-conspirator here is Gaul himself. And this is where we get some description of the hive as well. So this is what Calus had to say about Gaul the Dominus. At last, the Ark Trader. Let me tell you a story from the Oxa machine. Once upon a time, a small people lived on a dangerous world. By nature, they were petty and fearful, but they strove to be better, and together they overcame their fear. Unto these people came a king, who said, We are surrounded by enemies. We are weak and frail. But I have an answer. Eat these larvae, my people, and with their strength we will rise up. Whenever anyone protested the king said, Are you working with our enemies? No? Then why are you afraid of our strength? Thus the king led the great people into a slavery of their fear. Gaul will do the same. The Praetoriate chose Gaul to overthrow me, but they could not master him, for he had a fearsome strength. They tried to control him, to temper and delay his coup. Now he drags them forward by their own reins. Anyone can be great, Gaul says, if they work their hardest. But what he means is no one can be great, except in the way I approve. He says I was born to luxury and corruption. I say he was made only to fear and hate. Whose universe would you choose to live in, I ask you? Gaul's miserable slog? Gaul's age of closed fist? Or my world of plenty and delight? Do not mistake my joy for weakness. I fight to make a haven in a bloody cosmos. Gaul fights so that he can keep fighting forever. He has refused the title emperor, although some of his soldiers call him so. He says there will be no more emperors. I am the last emperor, the epitome of the true Cabal. The Dominus must die, and to the one who kills Gaul, I will offer an audience before my throne.
Holy cow. Dude, he's like, I'm starting to really think that thing was an Aham Carbone. I don't even know what to call it. Like the level of backstabbery that's happening here. Like this is on the this would be on the level of Aham Car magic for Calus to have risen as high as he has, and then to have this level of like, yeah, no, fuck that guy, we're killing him, across so many different people. Yeah, I think that thing was an Aham Carbone.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see a couple of different parallels here. So outside of the chief of festivals and whatnot, we have kind of this recurring pattern. So you have Umanarath, who was of the warring mindset, who then, in Calus's eyes, kind of corrupted his daughter to also be of the warring mindset. You have the consul, who came from the old Praetoriate, which was during the militaristic age of the Cabal, who has, in Calus's eyes, corrupted Gaul to be of the militaristic mindset as well. So it's this recurring pattern of like the old guard of the Cabal are corrupting this newer generation into reverting things back to how they were.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So these are the conspirators, the members that carried out this coup d'etat against Calus. And we can see how some of that actually happened from the Leviathan raid weapon entitled Midnight Coup. and its lore card goes as such. The conspirators came late in the night, skulking into my court while we caroused. Gaul himself led the coup, and it was by his own Red Legion that we were arrested. Imagine my surprise to see the consul stride into my court so puffed up with pride. He took cheap pleasure in hurling spittle in my face. We were frog marched to the Leviathan under cover of darkness. There was to be no execution. Gaul and the consul feared the mob. They knew how tenuous their grip on power would be, and how the people adored their god emperor. Gaul dared not look me in the eye. What was the emotion on his face? Was it shame? How could he bear such hate for one who had been as a father to him? We were sealed inside the Leviathan and ejected into the furthest reaches of space, left to the same fate I had determined for the consul so long ago. We were left to die. So I think this is the first mention of the Leviathan in the lore. And we have mentioned before Leviathan was a raid.
However,
it's
a lot more than that.
I don't know that we've ever described what the Leviathan actually is.
I was going to say, do you want to take a second here to kind of like dive into what the hell the Leviathan is?
The Leviathan is at the most simple explanation a absolutely enormous ship.
Well, it has I was going to say, it has an opening in the front of it as the intake for it, and that intake is able to swallow, Nessus.
Literally eats planets.
As its fuel. Which is interesting, because like when you first the very first time I ever saw it in game, I always thought it was a creature, but it's absolutely a ship with a city on top of it.
Yeah,
a city made of gold.
It's a gilded, it's a gilded city on top of this giant spaceship that literally eats planets for fuel. And something that's interesting, so it's implied that the Leviathan ship itself was built by Calus during his time as emperor, during his reign as emperor.
For what purpose?
And unsure whether it was meant to be a warship or it's just a show of opulence.
That's what I've always been curious about it, because the very first time that we as Destiny players got to mess around with it, it had essentially four encounters, 3 encounters and then a boss fight. And one of the encounters was called baths, and you're literally killing these bathers. So it made me think of like this, like the hot tub scene, right? Like these are literal, like we're hosting a feast, and we are feasting on the grow fat and be awesome. And so I don't know.
Yeah, so I've got some additional information about the Leviathan that is outside of what's in game.
Okay.
So according to one of the Bungie artists, who worked on the Leviathan, this artist in particular is the name of Dorje Belbrook. Hopefully I have that name correct, or I'm pronouncing it correctly. But in their concept art that they've released on ArtStation of the Leviathan, it's described as being modeled after one of the land whales of the Cabal homeworld. So when they're talking about whale kayaking,
shit,
they may have literally been the size of the Leviathan.
We're literally riding whales as kayaks. God dang it. All right. Well, now that's my new petition. I want whale kayaking.
There you go. We forget SRL. We need whale
Yep.
kayaking. Damn it.
I want whale kayaking in the game now. But so for it to be modeled after, that doesn't necessarily mean like that was the actual size of
That's
one of
true,
the whales
yeah.
on their home planet, right? Like this was just
Yeah.
built in the likeness of because I mean like it is freaking huge. Like it there's an entire prison at the center of it with a giant freaking Vex in it.
Well, I don't. That's not. That area is not meant to be a prison, from my understanding. It's essentially the Leviathan in the course of eating Nessus, sucked up a Vex along with everything else.
I mean, that's absolutely feasible, right? Like this thing is huge, but then like, so yeah, so okay, this is where like I'm gonna dive a lot into the in-game stuff for the Leviathan. Like, okay, so let's start with the intro portion of it. And again, for those of you that never got to experience this in game, I am so sorry, because this I absolutely loved this raid. This was a fantastic raid, and then the 2 raid layers that came with it. I had always envisioned them as making it as one continuous raid, like, you know, the size of like the size and length of Last Wish or something, like just this long slog through encounters and going through the underbelly and stuff like that. So when you first land on it, you walk this path up, and there's Cabal out front, and as long as you don't shoot them, they welcome you. They're like, yes, come, you know, like bathe in our greatness, like be you know.
Well,
be
and I
the
think
thing.
that goes back to Calus's bounty on Gaul, because you can only access the Leviathan after, you know, as far as the canonical timeline, the Leviathan only becomes available in our solar system. It arrives after we have already killed Gaul.
Right.
And he says, to the one who kills Gaul, I offer an audience before my throne.
Oh, shit.
That's what he's doing.
Holy shit. I never put that together. That's fucking brilliant. That's odd. He literally grants us exactly. He wow. Maybe hashtag maybe Calus not so bad.
Well, let's maybe reevaluate that when we get to the end of this this series. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's like looking at like 1918 Hitler and going, "Oh yeah, no, he's all right." Give him 20 or 30 years. It's not a good picture. It's not a good thing.
Not great. It's not great.
So yeah, no, but so the first area in this Leviathan it starts with a C, and I'm gonna butcher the name of it. It's like a Carabellum? Carabellum? I don't even remember the name of it. This is so bad.
Castellum.
That thing. What is that? What was the purpose of that, and why did we have to fight through that?
So, going back to the Roman influences, a castellum is a small Roman fortlet or tower, often used as a watchtower or signal station. So, the encounter in the castellum is literally us signaling via flags the area of the Leviathan that we are going to explore next. It's signaling to open those doors, essentially, and prove that we are worthy to do so.
Right. So from there, you get one of 3 encounters that rotated weekly, which I still think that was one of the coolest ways to do a raid. How you explored it in the underbelly and all that. One of the encounters was it was called Dogs, and it was a room filled with these plants that could be shot by a weapon, um, and it would essentially it would give a buff to everyone that was around it that was holding a seed. And then when you got so high on this buff, you were able to do exponential damage to these dogs that were in there. What was the whole, like, as far as lore wise, what was that room, and why were those dogs there?
So that room was referred to as the Pleasure Gardens, if I'm recalling correctly. Um, as far as why there were dogs there, I think because video game.
Because video
Because
game.
they
Yeah, no,
needed
that
an encounter, a combat encounter.
absolutely.
But the I think the intention of that room was like Calus is trying to grow a garden of
Sure.
Calus is still very much in the mindset of like revelry and have a celebration of everything in the universe because it's all going to end. And I think the pleasure gardens were his attempt at like, you just want to take a stroll through nature every
Make the
now and
most
then,
beautiful
and
place
he's going to
ever.
make a space for that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And why not have a few puppies to pet while you're there?
Right. Yeah. Why not have some more
Or
beasts try and tear your face off?
yeah, or tear your face. Whatever. It's same thing. Same thing. Same thing for the Cabal. Oh, that's why they don't have lips.
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
that is now why they don't have lips. Yeah. Okay. So that was one of the rooms. Another one of the rooms that I mentioned was the baths, and I definitely feel like that's very self-explanatory there. That's very much the Roman, this is the bathhouse, bathe in glory. But the liquid that they're bathing in, it's poisonous to us.
It is. I think there's a little extra to the royal pools, the bathhouse, that maybe isn't as well known. If I recall correctly, the bathhouse is in truth a cloning chamber.
Yep.
So the bathers that you fight that come out of these baths, these baths, they are literally being born before your eyes. They are literally being cloned before your eyes, rising out of the waters that allow for that process, and immediately attacking us.
Yep. And so I think that's very important to remember that right there, the whole fact that is a cloning facility in the baths is going to play a huge role later on in multiple points in Cabal history. Well, Cabal huge future from this point, but history for us.
Yeah.
So
and
that was baths.
Just to provide a source there, it's the Shadows plate, which is legendary chest armor from I believe Crown of Sorrow raid. Talks about the fact that those bathers are literally being born in that encounter.
Yep. So then the third encounter we have was always referred to as Gauntlet, because you're literally like running a gauntlet. Like it's it was my very first that encounter was my very first raid encounter in D2, and it was amazing mechanically. I was like, oh my god, this isn't just like stand on spot, kill boss, wait till boss not immune no more, kill boss now. It was very much like you had coordination. You were carrying these orbs through this outer ring, and you had to pick the right. You had to tell the guys on the inside of the ring, hey, open this door for me, and then you go through that door, and that like prevents you from being unmade from time because of the scions, right? Like that's or I guess there are scions in there that you had to kill, and are they like trying? Is it like Vex where they're trying to unmake you from time, or is it more of like they're just going to overload your brain with psychic energy and just make your head go pop?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact text that's used in the raid for when their wipe mechanic goes off. I don't believe there's anything to indicate that it's a Vex-like wiping of reality or wiping from a timeline. That is very Vex only, as far as I
Yeah.
know, and even then, Vex can only do that process within one of their own constructs, such as
Yeah.
the Vault of Glass. I think the Scions are just like it's psychic annihilation for
Okay.
their wipe
Sure.
mechanic.
Sure. I can get on board with that. And then the final encounter, is Calus asterisk.
Yeah. Is Calus, and say I'm not going to go over kind of the twist at the end of the raid with Calus because that's going to come up later.
That's
But we'll just say that even though you fight Calus at the end of the Leviathan raid, he is not killed when that fight concludes. And
Calus
he remains, Calus asterisk, and he remains clearly throughout the game, because we're still hearing about him now in the Vox Obscura mission, but also plays a significant part, at least in as a narrator or as a someone that's communicating with us for a lot of content after the original Leviathan raid.
Yep.
But so now that you kind of have an understanding of what the Leviathan, the ship, was, and just hopefully how massive it was and how much it contained, because it contained 2 additional smaller raids and the entirety of the menagerie, in addition to the raid we just talked about,
and another raid,
and another raid.
Yeah. Almost forgot about Crown, didn't you?
Well, that was the 2 that I was talking about.
Oh, I thought that you meant
the
like
raid layers.
the 2. Oh, so you're just counting the raid layers as a single. I get it. That's fine. They're not good enough to be individual raids by themselves. They're just lumped into a single thing.
I meant 2 in addition to what we had already talked about, which would have been both of them. But regardless,
well, then be that way.
I will. As far as the Cabal history portion, they have the conspirators of the coup have shuffled Calus and his whatever supporters he had in the palace into this Leviathan ship, and they have set it on a course out to the, just essentially pick a destination and never stop, as a galactic form of exile.
Yeah.
And Calus he's stuck. He's just stuck drifting across space in the Leviathan, until something happens. And this comes to us from a Leviathan raid weapon titled It Stared Back. And it goes as such.
I think that might have been one of my first raid weapons too.
It was a good one.
I ran around with that one. Anyway,
it says, the Leviathan came to a halt before a wall of infinite void. It could go no further as the navigation system had suffered a cataclysmic failure. The course that the conspirators had set crossed a space that simply didn't exist. I don't know how long we traveled. Years? Millennia? Time had ceased to have meaning as I wallowed in the despair of my exile. But this event shook me out of my stupor. At the edge of the universe, we had found something. No, we had found a nothing. From the seat of my observation chamber, I stared into the perfect void, and only I, a god, could understand what I witnessed. It was a thing greater than myself, and if such a thing exists, then I too can become more. At the edge of the universe, I stared into the infinite deep. It stared back and was pleased. I would become the herald of its victory and bear witness for all creation.
So that's
So there's a few things to unpack here.
absolutely. I mean, the first one it drifted for a long ass time, like so long that Calus just gave up on counting time, and that's I think that's important to state how much time, because that kind of gives you reason as to why the twist at the end of the raid happens.
And it's unclear what the resources aboard the Leviathan were for the people that were exiled on it. I doubt that the conspirators like checked it for supplies. Were like, okay, do they have enough for a couple hundred years? Yeah, all right, cool.
As you would do with your exiles, right? Like, oh,
right,
okay, yeah. We just completely overthrew the entire government. We've got the president. Sorry, Emperor, whatever. We've got all of his conspirators, which is a couple 100,000. Couple 100 million. Oh, okay, yeah, no. So we've got maybe about 80% of the Cabal race. Yeah, let's make sure they got food and stuff so they can survive this. What are we calling this again? Exile. Oh, so it's not like a pleasure cruise or anything. Like what? I mean, it sounds like it'd be a pleasure cruise, but we're exiling them. So then why do we care that it has food? Oh, okay. So we want. Okay, yeah, no, yeah.
So perhaps the Cabal don't need food and water in the traditional, in the way that we think about it. Or maybe they need very little compared to
I mean, those are just logistical. What do they call it?
Just logistic support.
Yeah, that's all that is. It's just logistical support. Is water and food.
The other option is that it's mentioned in a number of lore cards that the Leviathan ship, when it grinds up a planet, it turns it into wine, or I think they refer to it as like nectar of the gods or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Perhaps that is what it's been doing for however years or millennia it was traveling at this time. Any planet it happened to come across, it just gobbled up and turned into this wine that apparently can sustain the Cabal. So maybe that's where those resources came from.
So if we break this in, if we kind of looked at this from a scientific standpoint, we could say that as it's coming across these planets, it's breaking down every type of. Because again, we're making an assumption that the Cabal are a carbon-based life form and therefore need carbon to sustain themselves, as humans do.
Yeah.
It's breaking everything down into whatever base nutrients the Cabal need to live in the form of this nectar of the gods or wine or whatever you want to call it. And it's basically like biofuel is essentially what we're looking at here.
Yeah. And it's so regardless of how they survived long enough to reach this edge of the universe, where they're just staring out into nothingness, and Calus, being his egocentrical self, says, only I, as a god, could understand what I was looking at. But what did happen in some way is he made contact with who we now, I believe, with who we now know as the Witness. Be that a direct contact and he actually saw the Witness, or be it a he had some kind of intermediary spoke to him, or the Witness spoke to him through an artifact or through a pyramid ship or something like that. But regardless, he made contact with the Dark, the Witness, and either was told or decided for himself that, this is the thing that will end the universe, and I am to be the one that heralds its coming to the rest of creation.
That's kind of a. I mean, he's got some balls to kind of assume that, The ball's on
Right?
this
Yeah.
Cabal.
So as a Calus takes this job very seriously. He decides like, yep, I'm gonna tell everybody in existence that this end is coming, and you should all aligning with his original goals of revelry and merrymaking. You should all just forget fighting and forget all of those martial activities, because you're all gonna die anyway, so you might as well enjoy the ride.
Lay back and suck it. No, that's. But yeah, he's like, I mean, so I think of it as I mean, to me, it's he looked into this void, and I have okay, so I have a lot here that I'm gonna piece together,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of it's gonna involve things that we haven't discussed yet. So I don't know if I should talk about it all right now. But I like the theory that he looked into the void and went insane. And so that's another thing. Like we keep saying, hey, remember these thoughts for later. This is another thought that we need to remember for later. Of he got to the void. He said he as self-proclaimed God was like, I can interpret this, and then again, like the way you put it, whether it was told to him or whether he just decided or whatever, he turned around and did something.
Yes. The other important thing to note here is that the ship, the Leviathan, which previously he had no control over, he now has control over again. By nature of this cataclysmic navigation failure that was, the navigation was locked by his conspirators to exile him, and now he has control of the Leviathan once more. And after
I think
he's
it's just
gained control,
the system, because it talks about how like the system like came across this and it just stopped, like it didn't know what to do with this empty space. I think of it as like it's a computer, right? So it comes across this and goes, divide by 0.
Error it out.
Nope, can't do that at all. And so then it just keeps erroring out until exactly. So it just keeps erroring out until finally it just resets. It's like, okay, fuck it, reset. We'll start over from scratch, and then with the reset, it's like, oh hey, nobody's told, with the reset that removes all. I mean, we're talking like factory reset. Yeah, we're talking factory reset. We're talking like, dunked your iPhone in water. Sucks to suck. Factory reset. Yeah.
So, Calus now has control of the Leviathan again, and what he does with it after learning this new knowledge or this new purpose is go forth and explore the universe. And we have a little snippet from the Destiny 2 Collector's Edition lore booklet again. And he describes it like this. In my exile, I have plumbed the secret places of the cosmos. Even my grand Cabal is only a single tooth in the great jaws of time. The universe is strange beyond reckoning and dangerous beyond courage. I have voyaged beyond the edge of reason into the dominion of cold screams. I have seen our future written in the ruins of ancient fortress worlds. I have gathered up the moon-sized bones that tumble on the precipice of ancient singularities, and I have tossed them to scry our fate. So needless to say, Calus has been around some places.
Slightly.
Now we can infer...
That's an interesting thought there of the... I have seen our future scrawled on the ancient ruins.
Ancient fortress world. So there's actually we could theorize a little bit about what some of these places might be. So there's no direct evidence for any of this, but voyaged beyond the edge of reason into the dominion of cold screams. The easiest reference there to make is the Sea of Screams in the Ascendant Plane.
Absolutely. Sea of Screams.
So, Calus has apparently been to the Ascendant Plane. Right, yeah.
Apparently a reset on your nav system also gives you access to opening Ascendant portals. Whatever.
Yeah. Oh, there's this new button here I've never pressed before. What does that
do? It's just the darkness is like it's the witness's face, and then like you press it, it just like all sorts of face buttons come out of it, and it's like, oh shit, oh god, what did I do? And there just forms this portal, and you just go through, and now you're in the Ascendant Plane. You're like, what the fuck was that? Turns out Calus was just super high, just beyond. The whole time he's literally just sitting in his chair, just vegged out. Like, yeah, no, he didn't actually press a button.
No.
That's canon in my head.
There you go. The line you brought up, the seeing our future written in the ruins of ancient fortress worlds. When I hear ancient fortress world, the thing that comes to mind for me as a possibility would be a hive war moon. Because those are literally moons carved into hive fortresses, hive battleships.
Yeah.
So, that could perhaps be what he's referring to there.
Well, and I'm curious if it's Vex. Since Vex can
Vex
exist
as well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like he's able to see his future inscrawled in their past because for the Vex, time is just a number. Like it doesn't govern anything for them. Other than, forward movement or reverse movement, but it's not it's not movement though. It's not they can't time travel. This is not a Vex episode. This is a Calus episode. No, this is a Cabal episode. So I'm going to think that I like the idea that first one is, but the moons on the edge of singularities, absolutely. Those have got to be high fortresses. Those got to be high warships that he's.
So listen again. I have gathered up the moon-sized bones that tumble on the precipice of ancient singularities, and I have tossed them to scry our fate. So not literal moons, bones the size of moons. And
are we talking like Scrimshaw? Like, is that what he's doing in these bones? Is like I'm talking about Scrimshaw, right?
So Scrimshaw is the scroll work or the engraving of bones.
Right.
I'm seeing this more as maybe he's just being flowery here with his presentation.
Oh,
but
sure.
In my mind, I'm seeing like a Norse soothsayer who's tossing bones to predict the future.
Oh. Interesting.
Now,
I didn't think of it that way. I was thinking like my second thought there was like he's Scrimshaw on it, or like he's literally like carving, his past deeds into these bones the size of moons and tossing them out to think. But I like that idea too, that like, he's tossing bones, like I'm rolling dice, like I'm trying to see the future. That's interesting. He really did he went nuts.
So if we were to take what he said though at face value and not just flowery bullshit, the only thing
Calus was never about flowery bullshit.
Right, yeah. The only thing that we have heard about in previous lore, as far as I can recall, that would be moon-sized bones, potentially, that was able to traverse through space was the Leviathan of Fundament.
Yep.
So
which makes it's starting to make sense. It's to me, I'm starting to think that like these Leviathans are not just one-off entities. Like the fact that they call this ship the Leviathan, I'm thinking that there these Leviathan are space creatures that are huge. Because if anyone needs a reference in game, when you go into the Valid Disciple raid, or if you go into the mission, what's the weekly mission? I can't think of what it's called.
Preservation, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you get to that, when you get inside the pyramid ship and you get to the main room with all the little chambers in it, that big white bone sitting up top, that's a rib from a Leviathan.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's fucking huge. Like, I mean, we would be like blood cells compared to these bones. Like we are tiny compared to a Leviathan. So yeah, maybe this Leviathan, maybe this really is not just made in the likeness of a Leviathan, as far as like made to look like, it's also to scale.
So
Maybe it
another
is.
fun thing regarding the Leviathan ship is that Calus, I'm trying to find exactly where this comes from, but Calus actually describes the Leviathan itself. So we have the description, or at least the information from the artist that penned the concept art for the Leviathan, saying that it was based off of a land whale from Torbottle from the Cabal homeworld.
Hey, whale
But
kayak,
that doesn't necessarily,
not land whale.
yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the in-game explanation for the Leviathan. That could have just been the inspiration during the design process.
Sure.
So a fun little bit here from Calus is he has a statement saying, "This Leviathan, this prison ship, I will remake it as I have been remade. No longer will it represent a mythical beast from the dreams of worms. It will serve as an icon for my newfound gluttony."
Dude, this is
So he
this is a
describes it
Leviathan.
as a mythical beast from the dreams of worms. I think maybe that points to, yes, that this is made in the likeness of the Leviathan.
And that there is not just the Leviathan, this is just a Leviathan. As in there are more of these things out in the universe.
Maybe. We
Not
don't
ship.
have
Not ship.
anything to
Mythical beast that the sisters rode the needle ship to and waved, and he was like, "No, don't do it because Rulk stole my rib earlier." Yeah.
Well, and even Calus says, it will no longer represent a mythical beast from the dreams of worms. That could be seen as either a beast of many, or a as in like the only one they ever saw and had nightmares about, I guess.
Yeah. No, absolutely, because that was their prison guard. Like,
right.
That like the more we've learned about the hive recently with this is not a hive episode. Anyway, the more we've learned about the hive recently with all of the Witch Queen stuff, the Leviathan was very much a prison guard to the worms.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So yeah, I think that all of this points to the Leviathan raid, or the Leviathan ship, being a Leviathan, being the mythical beast, the Leviathan of fun.
I don't think being the mythical beast, but being
right.
Designed after. Yeah.
Right. That. It is not the Leviathan of Fundament, but it is highly, highly designed after. And possibly in size, like possibly to scale.
Yeah.
Is what I'm starting to think now.
That would I kind of think so too. That would make a lot of sense.
I mean, if we think of how big Fundament was to hold the Leviathan halfway down to the worms, I mean, who's to say Torbottle wasn't that big?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'm going to. I've got a couple other entries here that I want to read. We may. Trying to figure out how long I want this one to go. Just because I have enough information to go for some time yet, but I I think we've been sticking to a good time frame, and we're gonna try to continue to do so.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Well, let's read a couple of these and see where this takes us, because we got
yeah,
a little bit of
so
time left.
the other, as Calus is exploring the universe, this is where he is taking up what he is calling shadows, who are typically the last of a species, or the greatest of a species, and he's using these shadows as his own kind of personal, like strike force, I guess, for lack of a better term, to
I'm going to
accomplish
use another
his
word to describe them.
specific revenge and goals. So
I'm
what's the
going to
other word
call
you would
them.
use?
I would call them disciples.
We've talked about that, I think, in our episode with Rulk, where we talked about Rulk. But yeah, it again, if Calus talked to the witness directly, or in enough of a way for him to know that the witness had this like disciple hierarchy, it seems really, really coincidental that Calus would be copying that with his shadows.
That's what
So I
that's
think
where
there was a conversation there.
it's interesting, right? Because like on the one hand, anyone that's talked to the witness directly, it the witness takes on whatever pleasing form it is for the person talking to it, and it's interesting to think of like, can the witness just drive someone insane because by standing in front of them? And we've looked at that, and that's I'm curious if that was part of it, if it was just, Callus just went insane by standing in front of the witness, or if he really did stand in front of the witness and he really did have a conversation, and the witness was like, "Hey, this is my plan for the end of the universe. I'm going to create one of everything, or sorry, I'm going to whittle it down to one of everything, or whatever the strongest is of whatever. And if it doesn't survive, then screw it. I don't even care. And then at the end of the universe, I'm going to have all these one of everything just have it out with each other, and then let the universe end with a single being." Because we talked about that with the darkness. Like that is the darkness's ultimate goal, is to set the flower game back to. This is not a darkness episode. I am really bad at tangenting tonight. But if that's his philosophy and that's his idea, he could have easily shared this with Calus. And if Calus thought himself godlike and think, "Oh well, this is what a god does. This is how a god operates. I must do the same to mirror this." But then to just call it a shadow, right? Like to be the last of whatever. Yeah, no, that's a. I'm start. I this man. This is so. This could go either way. Like he could have just gone insane, but to have as many similarities as he had to have talked to him.
Right, like it feels so close that like he had to have had some notion of what the witness's plans were, or at least how the witness was enacting its plans and picking disciples and such.
Either whispers or direct contact, parallels. Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So regardless, Calus in his explorations finds these shadows, and he uses them to carry out certain goals, usually enacting revenge against some of the co-conspirators, or against some of the conspirators that led to his exile. So as much as he is, "Oh, I'm a herald of the end of the universe," and blah, 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 he is still very much holding a vendetta against these people and using resources to kill them.
Yeah. As an exiled emperor does, right? Like,
right. Yeah. So the first, we actually have stories of who these first shadows were and what they did under Calus's direction. And these all come from the different armor sets that are acquired in the Leviathan raid. So the first is from the Titan set, the Armor of Rule. And as the name suggests, Rule is the name of one of Calus's shadows. And specifically, Rule comes from a race called the Clips. So I'm going to read pretty much his whole story. I think will be the easiest route, and then we can talk about it after it's finished.
Sure.
So, the Clips had only celebrated their first century of global peace when the cataclysm struck. A flash of interstellar gamma radiation killed every living thing in their western hemisphere, poisoned the atmosphere, and destroyed all technological civilization. As the surviving Clips clawed back to the subsistence cave farming, they met new horror. The radiation had burnt a mysterious signal into the comets and asteroids of their system, and as this debris rained down on their world, it seeded hideous alien life. Millennia later, they had become a civilization that knew only war, a culture that revered the gun, batteries of planetary defense weapons holding back an endless poison skyfall. The moon, Kaga Clips, bristled with interceptors, ready to fend off any threat. And yet, they were no match for the Leviathan. The greatest warriors of the Clips lay dead. They formed a bloody trail through the Leviathan. Only Rule had lived to see the throne room. Calus calmly sipped his wine and considered Rule from the height of his golden seat. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Rule stared, dumbfounded, bleeding and exhausted. He didn't know what to make of a creature that would casually offer sustenance and slaughter in equal measure. "I offer you a warrior's paradise, Rule of the Eclipse. Join me and be counted among the lucky few that might see the end of this world." What could Rule do but accept? Rule gathered his cloak around him tightly as he pushed his way through the teeming marketplace. All around him, Cabal stumbled and pushed their way towards the celebration. No one seemed to question his identity as a foreign merchant, but his heart still raced. Rule thought about the mission that Emperor Calus had given him. "I'm sending you to the Cabal homeworld, Rule. There's a celebration, and you are to be a bearer of my gifts, the finest wines and spirits the universe has to offer." Rule was disappointed. He wanted to bring down great beasts, not assassinate old Cabal aristocrats. "Oh, Rule, don't fret. I promised you a warrior's paradise, and you shall have it. The gifts will buy you access to some of my former friends. I haven't spoken to them in some time, and well, I'd like them to know I haven't forgotten them." He arrived at the estate of Iskal, former friend and confidant of the exiled Emperor Calus. It took surprisingly little to convince the guards to grant him entrance. The Cabal must truly be crazy for the wine he offered as a gift. It was a day of celebration, after all. Who knows how deep into their cups these guards were? Once inside, he spotted his mark. Rule wasted no time. He removed the sheath from the end of his staff to reveal a spear tip. Iskal fell backwards and attempted to crawl away as his guards were skewered. Rule grabbed a cask of wine and pounced on the terrified creature, pouring it down his throat. Iskal choked and sputtered and flailed helplessly. Rule delivered his message as promised. "Emperor Calus has not forgotten you." Rule didn't stop pouring the wine until Iskal went limp. Rule was covered in the sticky black and violet of Cabal blood and wine. He dropped Iskal's body to the floor. Just then, Molly the celebrant entered the courtyard. when Rule realized his second target had carelessly walked alone into a secluded space in the midst of a massive celebration, he thought, "Perhaps this is the warrior's paradise that Emperor Calus promised." Rule activated his stave's secondary configuration and fired a harpoon into Molly's exposed flank. The barbs pierced deep, and the giant beast of a Cabal let out a monstrous howl. Blind with pain, he began to run, dragging Rule behind him like a harpooned whale dragging a ship. The honored celebrant Molly ran through the streets of the Cabal homeworld on Celebration Day, howling in agony and dragging Rule behind. It was such a spectacle that no one was sure exactly what was happening or what to do about it. Molly ran all the way to Dominus Gaul's ceremony and right up the steps before collapsing at his lord's feet. Rule realized now that he faced a choice: try to escape or finish the job. Rule yanked out the harpoon before shoving it through Molly's neck. He had just enough time to pull off his helmet and smile in Gaul's face before he was killed. Truly, Emperor Calus had delivered a warrior's paradise. Thus ends the story of Rule.
Holy shit.
And
so he could have possibly gotten away with literally killing the entire coup, like every member of the coup, like to me it sounds like all these guys are literally like just drunk off their asses, and whatever this wine is awesome, and he
yeah.
kills the first guy by drowning him to death in his own wine, and like, hey, guess what? Calus says, "What's up?" He dies. Molly walks in. "Hey man, who are you?" Boom, harpoon in the leg. Ah, motherfucker, and runs off naked through the streets. I'm going to say naked through the streets because that'd be hilarious, right? This naked Cabal just running through the streets. Everyone's drunk off their ass with this guy attached to the end of the hook, and everyone's just like, "What the fuck was that?" That's like the Mardi Gras thing, right? Like you see a chicken with like a guy naked with a chicken head riding a horse, and you're just like, "What the fuck was that?" And you don't, but you're so drunk you don't even care. So that happened. Runs straight to Dominus Gaul's door, drops dead on the doorstep, and the guy being dragged behind it is like, "Oh, well, shit. Okay." Picks it, yanks his spear out of this thing, shoves it in its neck, takes his hat off, and starts smiling at everyone like, "Ha ha ha ha! What the fuck is happening?" Then gets killed. Then just gets shot to death, right? Like everyone pounces on him and kills him.
Yeah, well, I don't think
Celebration
he had
continues.
I don't think he had any idea that he was going to survive. Like he
No.
had the choice of run or finish the job. And so, but Rule is a shadow of the clips, and Calus has used him to carry out an assassination on Molly, the co-conspirator, as well as Iskal, who we mentioned in our previous episode, who was not a conspirator, but Calus kind of considered him, again, in the same offense that Molly had of like not defending him, so that made them guilty. So 2 of the people on Calus's list were killed by Rule. And if we remember, when Calus was talking about Molly, he says, "Molly must die, let his death come on a day that he himself invented." And this is Celebration Day, is what's referred to in the cards of Rule. So he has killed Molly on a holiday that Molly invented.
Boom.
So another shadow that is worth talking about is the Ace Defiant. And this comes to us from the Hunter armor of the Leviathan raid. And the Ace Defiant is a shadow of yet another race. In this case, the Sindhu. and their story is this. When his eyes finally opened, Jairus was staring at a fuzzy silhouette of something giant. The giant spoke. "Welcome home," it rumbled. Jairus blinked rapidly. The room began to come into focus, shining like a temple. The giant spoke again. "My child, there is nothing to fear. I have rescued you. Welcome to my empire." The feeling returned to Jairus' limbs. He was restrained, and this creature now towered over him. He was staring into the face of death. "Fear not, my warrior-to-be." Jairus blinked slowly. What about the other pilots, his battalion? Did they escape? "You, the last star pilot of the Sindhu, will be my ace defiant." It was not a choice. With a flourish, Emperor Calus lifted a hand. "My star, a gift for you." The theater had begun. The hangar door opened slowly, and behind it a row of purple banners dropped. One after another, as each banner snapped into place, a scion fell to hands and knees, head bowed low. Jairus' shoulder disappeared in the Emperor's hand. "Come, let us open your gift." The two walked past the kneeling warriors. "I have named it for you," Calus crooned. "I call it God's will." Jairus' chest fluttered. The ship was beautiful. A drum sounded. A Cabal emerged, delicately carrying armor, holding it as if it would break. Piece by piece, it was placed on the floor in front of Jairus. The weight on his shoulder lifted. "This is yours. When you take it, you are mine." And Calus left. His procession followed. Only God's will and Jairus remained. Shayet's ship lay smashed and burning on the ground. A few meters away, Shayatet himself crawled from a pod. Jairus jumped lightly from his own ship, sent it rocking back into low orbit with a tap of his nav gauntlet. God's will had done its part. Now Jairus must finish him. Jairus raised a pistol, another of Calus's gifts, and emptied its clip. Shayatet heaved and jerked as black pressure gel spouted from his armor, but he did not fall. He roared, blood and saliva splattered the ground, and charged. Jairus holstered the pistols. He waited until Shayatet was nearly on top of him before activating the energy blade. A gargling roar, a spray of pressure gel, and it was over. Jairus' fingers trembled as he summoned God's will again. In the cockpit, Calus' face appeared. "My heart swells with pride. This drink is in your honor." "Jairus, you simply are wrong." "We will agree to disagree, my lord. Your palate simply lacks the sophistication to detect the notes in your world's drink." "I am Sindhu. I was crafted for my palate, my lord. But you simply do not taste all of this. It is impossible." "I do not currently taste anything, my lord." "Well, we must fix that." In the silence of space, a nearby explosion rocked God's will. Jairus narrowed his eyes. "My lord, I have an issue to tend to." "I shall save your drink for you." The cockpit monitor flickered from Calus's face to a radar. Small red triangles blinked on screen as an alarm took up a shrill cry. Jairus pulled a visor down in front of him and fired the ship's thrusters. Jairus left God's will behind for his final mission. He needed a ship big enough to carry his fellow shadows to Gaul, and with enough internal shielding and anti-impact padding to ensure the plan they had developed would succeed. Under Jairus' control, the ship dodged and weaved and carved a path through the Red Legion. His fingers flipped switches, rapidly changing the displays on the monitors surrounding the cockpit. In the hold, the shadows waited. Jairus aligned the ship's trajectory towards the Dominus' ship. The plan was simple. "My dear Jairus," the Emperor had said, "we must deliver the shadows to the Dominus at any cost." Jairus knew what this meant. For him, the trip was one way. But that was all right, so long as Gaul's was too. And there ends the story of Jairus the Ace Defiant.
These shadows are. I mean, this is very much the revenge story that Calus wants. Like he's creating these lasts of this kind to just carry out, kill all. Anyone who usurped me, anyone who's part of this coup, anyone who defied me, they're dead to me. Like the bounties that he issued, he is now just like
he's
handpicking. Yeah, he's just handpicking who he's giving them to. He's like, okay, shadow number 1, you get Molly. Shadow number 2, you get well, we can't quite give you Gaul, so we'll give you part of Gaul. Well, like you just drive the ship, and I'll pay you later. It's fine. So this is very much a
So we know Molly was eliminated by a shadow. We know Sheotet, the Emperor's protector or former protector, was eliminated by a shadow. So that only leaves Atzat, Umanarath, who we know falls as part of the ritual to summon Shivu Arath. Keitel, who is still in game.
What?
Surprise. The consul and Gaul, who we know what their fate was.
Well, we do, but our listeners
We do.
Don't.
Some of our listeners may not, and they'll find out, but not right
next time.
So there's one other shadow that I want to talk about here. So just because we know what happened to Gaul, doesn't mean that there weren't other attempts on his life.
Oh, sure.
And we see that in the end of Jairus' story about him driving the other shadows to Gaul's ship. And
presumably
we see
smashing
how that plays
into it
out.
Cabal style, right?
Right, yeah. And we see how some of that plays out through the last armor set acquired in the Leviathan raid, which is the Warlock armor set, which is the describing the story of the Fulminator. And again, this is another race of people that Calus has made one of them his shadow, has made them subservient. So, the story of the Fulminator goes like this. Calus gestured towards the crackling arc storm before him. The energy mass shivered, tethered to a golden spindle in the center of the chamber. "You are marvelous," he said to the Arcborn. His eyes drank in the flickering light. "You will cast a glorious shadow." A panel on the wall lit up in Cabal. "This ship is tiny." The Emperor threw his head back and scoffed. "Compared to the interstellar conduits of your people, anything would seem small. The Leviathan is formidable in its own right, I assure you." "Leave my people be. I will serve." "Of course, you are all I need. Your very presence eviscerates flesh." He gestured, and a metallic shell lowered from the darkness above. Now the Fulminator was free to walk the decks of her new flagship. Statesman Thual ran, and the Fulminator followed him. He was a minor diplomat who had played a part in the coup against the emperor. She wasn't certain of the details. The social dynamics of organics were difficult to grasp, and she found them constantly irrelevant. He had no idea she was still there. He had thought he had outrun her, but the Arkborn knew that bipedals rarely look up. She hovered far above her target, specific limiters on her armor disabled so that Ark could flow freely and lift her to the heavens. Below, the statesman had chosen a brightly lit street that led to a dead end on the left turn in front of him. She descended. The charred husk that was the statesman had revealed several things before he expired. He had mistaken her for a warrior of the light, one of their Stormbringers, who apparently bore a resemblance to the Fulminator. She wished to see one of them. No biped was ever anything like her. She felt something like regret when Thal said his people were mobilizing to annihilate them. She made other reports to Calus pertaining to the locations of Red Legion armories and fleet movements. He only cared about that one. Now that the military was in power in Calus's absence, military parades on Cabal worlds were commonplace. Gaul's flagship would take part in one such celebration on Resignation Day, in the fringes of the Sol system, in honor of a mythic praetor. That was where the shadows would kill the Dominus. The Fulminator noticed a difference in her fellow shadows as they prepared for war. The usual bickering fostered by the multi-species makeup of Calus's enforcer group had vanished overnight as they faced the task that they had gathered to complete: to kill Dominus Gaul. Calus had recruited them through bribery or promises of wealth. None of them expected to survive their mission. The might of the Red Legion had grown vast. This acceptance brought them together. The Fulminator didn't understand or care. As long as Calus left the Arkborn to their interstellar conduits, she would do what she had done since the day she came aboard the Leviathan: destroy the enemies of the Emperor. Jairus' fighter soared like a blade into the throat of the Dominus command ship. They hoped it wouldn't matter. Jairus died on impact. The shadows burst forth from his shattered vessel, the Fulminator leading the charge. Every limiter on her suit was undone, and the unrelenting fury of her being was loosed onto the bridge and would permanently disable her. She would still exist, but couldn't anchor herself or manipulate anything around her. She would scatter to the winds. Navigation displays exploded in a shower of sparks as she passed. The storm she had become reached an apex of intensity, and she reached out to scores of Cabal and swallowed them as she felt them die. She wrapped Gaul in her light, invigorating him in bursts of flaring arc. She was fading, but he would die, wouldn't he? And thus ends the story of the Fulminator.
Holy shit! So this is a very interesting. It's so presumably all the other shadows are like the last of their people, the last one, the whatever. This is a
either
shadow
the last or like they're no one did this willingly. is what
right.
It comes down to.
Well, we say that, but this one almost seems like it joined willingly to say to
protect her people.
to say to right to say to Calus, hey, I'll use me and leave the rest of my people be. Leave them to their thing, and Calus just agrees to this. That's kind of a interesting thing there.
Well, he agrees
but definitely
to it. But we also know that he went back on that word because there are Arkborn in the menagerie. that we free as part of our the that menagerie room's activity.
That's right. Well, shit. Maybe not to be trusted.
Not
Okay.
to be
Well,
trusted.
yeah. Nope. Fuck that.
But
Yeah. So this Arcborn, this is a non-organic thing. Like, it's just a ball of energy, is what it sounds like.
Sentient arc energy. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that the other Cabal refer to this thing as, oh, this is a light bearer, right? Like they think it's a guardian. They think it's a risen.
Right.
Like, they look at it as a guardian. And so now this sentient arc energy is like, there's something like me out there? Okay, well, let's go see this thing too while we're at it. Oh no, kill Gaul. Okay, yeah, kill Gaul. Kill Gaul, who's just chilling on the edge of the soul system, apparently.
I mean, we say chilling. He's hosting a celebration before, like, sending his armies against the tower. I think
that's true.
Is what's happening here.
I mean, I chill during a celebration, right? Like, I'm
sure.
Pretty chill. Yeah. Drinks all around, right? Like, yeah.
What this shows us is that Calus had built up this army of shadows, this elite strike force, with the intention of enacting revenge against his conspirators, and he fully intended to assassinate Gaul before Gaul ever reached us.
Yeah.
He wasn't necessarily trying to protect us, it just the timeline worked out that way.
Yeah.
Presumably also all of the shadows died in this attempt. And Gaul survived.
That's what it sounds like. All asterisk.
Now, it is reasonable, I think, to say that Calus had no idea that guardians or light bearers existed until he received the report from the Fulminator about being compared to these other entities by this aristocrat.
All right, I'll give you that one.
Because Calus has been in exile this whole time, or
right.
Was exiled and then doing his own thing. He wouldn't know about Cabal being interactions with guardians. And
because I guess this brings up a lot of questions too, like, why is Gaul at the edge of the soul system?
So I think this is probably just prior to Gaul's attack on us.
Right. But what in the universe drew Cabal to that? Like, or drew Gaul to us? Like, was this just outward expansion? And is this a next episode thing?
So not necessarily next episode thing. I mean, I talk about it a little bit here, but essentially, remember, we fought the Cabal in D1 prior to Gaul being here.
Right. So is this just part
scouts.
Of like expansion?
Yeah, it's just expansion. They were scouting out. It's implied that they were on Mars because they found that Mars had a rich number of resources that the Cabal needed, and they were originally just
homeworld,
a mining crew. Yeah, they were a mining crew and scouts, and they arrived in Mars, met very little opposition until we came along and went, "What the heck are you doing?" And now they suddenly have an enemy that they've never fought before.
Hold the fuck on. You're telling me the entire reason we fight Cabal is because a bunch of guys just showed up and were like, "Who the fuck are you?" and started kicking their ass? That's literally the entirety of the reason why we're fighting Cabal. Okay. All right.
Well, not the entirety of the reason, but the Cabal were not here. The Cabal didn't know about us. The Cabal didn't know that the Guardians existed or that humanity existed. They found a very resource-rich planet and said, "Oh, okay, we're going to set up shop here. We're going to mine it for its resources. And, the rest of the empire can maybe make their way here and this will be a colony at some point." But their main goal was just, they were scouts and they found a resource-rich, place for the empire to use.
And they didn't
not
think
realizing
to look
that it was inhabited
one more planet in, right? Like,
well, and to be fair, in D1, it's and this is where we get some. I don't want to say some retconning, but in D1,
we absolutely do.
ships capable of interstellar travel were not common.
Right.
You know, like we were very lucky in D1 for our Guardian to come across a ship that could traverse Earth in general, and then we had to go on a whole, couple missions to find a drive that let us go to other planets.
Yep. That's right.
Which would imply that there wasn't a whole lot of interplanetary movement at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Cabal were a warring race. They had never come across anything they hadn't been able to beat back eventually.
That's true. Either beat back completely and kill, or beat back enough to subjugate. Yeah.
Right.
No.
So they had no reason to believe, like, yeah, if we come across something,
we'll just kill it.
We'll deal with it. Like,
well, and there's even a line in D2, like, who knew Cabal had scientists? Because we just see them all as like warring things. I think it's in the not Insight Terminus. What's the other one? That's on Nessus. Inverted Spire.
The Inverted Spire. Yep.
Yeah. And they just like they're just drilling into Nessus for resources. Like that's yeah. They're doing the same thing on Nessus that then that makes sense. Okay.
And it was only when the Cabal met the Vex on Mars, and then us, the Guardians, that they recognized that they had come across a force that they could not deal with the battalions that were stationed at Mars.
Sure.
And they put out a request for backup, which was followed up on by the Skyburner Legion, who came in as backup to assist the Siege Dancer Legion, which was stationed on Mars and Phobos. And that's actually where the beginning of the Taken King campaign starts, is where the Skyburner Legion has been reinforcing the base on Phobos with the intention of leading a siege against Earth.
And then Taken King interrupts that.
And that's actually the very first mission of the Taken King campaign.
Yep.
We are there to try and deal with the Cabal that are amassing on Phobos.
Yep.
Only to find most of them are dead.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out, like, what happened here.
What the fuck even happened here? Yeah.
And we find out it was because Oryx.
Yeah. He likes making... He and his sisters like making war machines out of moons. That's what they do.
Yep. And the Cabal suffered massive losses. Massive losses from this. There's actually a line in that Taken King mission from a scannable that Ghost says, Cabal mining sites across Mars and Phobos have been hit. Losses to the Blind Legion, 35%. Losses to the Sand Eater Legion, 58%. Losses to the Dust Giant Legion, 39%. So
massive loss on a massive scale here.
Huge losses. And the Cabal report that they are coming across this new force that is just obliterating them. And in the strike, I believe it's the strike, during the Taken King. It might have been the Shield Brothers strike, or it may have been a mission. The Cabal, in an attempt to fight the Taken King, crash a ship into the Dreadnought.
Yep.
And they're as successful as you might expect. They crash that ship just fine, but are unable to make any kind of real dent in the hive forces. And so they send out a distress signal to Dominus Gaul, saying, we're not winning. We need the support of the Empire.
We need the full Empire.
And that is what spurs on Dominus Gaul to take up the full force of the Cabal Red Legion and start making their way towards the Sol system.
Gotcha.
And presumably it just takes them the period of time, a couple of years in our time,
Sure.
from the end of Taken King to the beginning of D2 Vanilla to get to us from Torbottle. Which apparently during that travel is where this attempted assassination on Dominus Gaul took place and failed.
That's mind-blowing to me to think that like all of this is borderline coincidental.
I mean, isn't any altercation at the end of the day coincidental?
All right.
Like,
all right, you. All right, you.
You can dumb down anything into.
All right, you.
Well, it just so happened to happen that way.
you son of a bitch. I see. All right, I got you. I got you. All right.
So,
well, is this a good stopping point then, or we've talked through the entire coup, all the major players of the coup. We've talked through the exile of Calus, and his meeting of the witness. We've talked through at least some of his shadow gathering, if not all, and the attempted assassination on Gaul. Just the we'll call it the eve before the Destiny 2 Red Legion launch.
There's only two other things I want to touch on, just real quick. One is just completing the idea of all of Calus's previous shadows died in this attempted assassination, and it would make sense then that Calus would go, all right, I need another strong group to try and carry out my will. The Fulminator was, by many accounts, one of the most feared beings in his arsenal, and with the Fulminators being compared to these things called Guardians, maybe I should look into them and see if I can get them on my side. And I think those are the dots that connected to him reaching out to us and trying to bring us in as shadows, in addition to our eventual defeat of Gaul. But the other thing that I want to read here is a little lengthy to put at the end, but I think it's better here than at the beginning of next episode.
How dare you? How dare you extend an episode out?
And this is actually a letter or communication that was written by Calus to Gaul, though it's unclear if Gaul ever got it. And this is, you can read this letter or piece it together from the lore entries of the Armor of the Champion, Armor of the Agent, and Armor of the Minister, which are the hard mode versions of the Leviathan raid armor. So these armor pieces actually have different lore cards on them than the normal mode of Leviathan. And you put them together and you get this letter out of it. So I did not piece this together myself. I am using a Destiny lore Reddit post by a user, Dobie Rams, who did all the work of figuring out what order these went in and putting it all together. So credit to them. But I'm going to read what this letter addressed to Gaul said.
And this is from Calus?
From Calus to Gaul.
To Gaul. Okay.
Yep. What sad turns has your life taken since my exile? When you look upon the dour face of the consul, do you feel the nauseous twinge of regret? Do you find solace in a meditative state, a lonely island in a sea of incessant blithering? I wonder what portion of your life is spent pondering how else it might have been. All of those possibilities must pile up behind you like a chorus of furies, each whispering doubts in your ear. When next we meet, the volume of that chorus will become deafening, and you will finally understand the totality of your mistake. The light of this universe will soon dim. You cannot see it yet, but I assure you, there will be no denying when it comes. There will be no safety and no defense. The only question you should ask yourself is, where do I want to be at the end? From my vantage, I have cause to ask myself this question with some urgency. I will move soon, and I mean to choose the place from which I will watch all become darkness. I find it poetic and satisfying that you will be near. When you imagine the last moments of all life in this universe, what do you see? Is it struggle, war, and death? Are you fighting to the last breath? Are you suffering? I am not. In those last moments, I am surrounded by joy, pleasure, and good company. I am the last thing that they see. They give to me the greatest gift. The last of the living acknowledge that I, above all other beings, was real. I have known you through many lives now. Gladiator, Primus, Usurper. With each new incarnation, I think we learn a little more about each other. How many more lives before our relationship becomes complete? But this life is my last, because there is no further that I can go. When next we meet, you will face one who has transcended even the gods. What will you be? I think perhaps I am finally ready to forgive you. There's no point in carrying around this hate forever. I think about who you were and who I was, and the end seems inevitable. How can I blame you for the poisonous ambition that the consul poured into your ears? You were merely his instrument. In the end, it has all been for the better, has it not? Your betrayal is the first chapter in the story of my ascension. Sometimes I stare into the abyss of space, plagued by a terrible fear. In this waking nightmare, everything you said to me and everything you felt for me was a lie. But what was the true nature of these lies? Were they manipulation wrought by ambition? Were they hateful machinations of vengeance? Or, worst of all, were they self-delusions? Did I merely ascribe to you words and feelings that were in fact only my own? I think it is only fair to warn you. I mean to reincorporate the Red Legion. I am their rightful emperor, and I shall offer them forgiveness. All they must do is repent and submit for their re-education. I feel like it is only fair to make you the same offer. How does Primus of the Red Legion sound? Your re-assimilation into the Empire is likely to be cause for concern. You'll understand that it will come with some preconditions. After all, we can't have it appear that I've played favorites. But there's no cause for alarm. Your re-education is merely a formality. While I may forgive you, the rest of the Empire will need some time. It's important to show the people how you have changed. It won't be forever, just however long it takes to earn your place at my side once more. When you left me on the Leviathan, you left me with nothing. I hope you understand things are different now. I have been tested, and I have emerged from the other side. You always spoke of how adversity shaped the person you are, how it made you stronger. I see the truth of that now in a way that before I never could. I want you to see what I have learned. I want you to see what adversity has allowed me to become. You've gone to great lengths to hide your movements. I know because I've been tracking you. Not out of any kind of obsession. I just need to know what you're doing. It might affect my plans. But I'm curious to know, are you hiding because of me? Is there some reason you don't want me to see you? I'm not upset about it, but you should know that I'm not hiding from you. If you want to understand what I'm doing, you need but look. You don't realize that I am all around you. I know that you have gone to the Sol system. I'm writing because I will be there soon as well. Perhaps a reunion is in order. My agents have left ahead of me to prepare for my arrival. I like to establish good relationships with the locals. I know it may surprise you, but one of the ways in which I have grown is my attitude towards the lesser species. I have come to believe that there is a place for all creatures in my empire. The end will be so much more interesting if we face it together. I often think of what it would be like to see you again, how you might look and what you might say. I imagine different scenarios where you walk around a corner and there I am, magnificent and in control. I don't see you at first, and you hesitate. Is this a confrontation you want to have? Of course, your curiosity gets the better of you. Our eyes meet. Neither of us say anything, because we both know what's at stake. That this could be the end of an empire. Thus ends Calus's letter. It's just an interesting little peek into Calus's viewpoints on Gaul. Like even after the failed assassination attempt, he's willing to like bring Gaul back into the fold. Like he truly had this kind of familial bond that he didn't necessarily want Gaul gone. At least some part of him didn't.
Yeah.
So no indication if Gaul ever got that letter, and clearly he never acted on it. But yeah, I think that is where we're gonna end tonight.
Okay then. I'm speechless. You have such a good reading thing going on. Like I don't even. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you approve.
I approve. Hopefully our listeners approve.
Hopefully so.
Speaking of listeners, we should give some thank yous. Who should we thank?
I am going to. So, we have a lot of different people, and actually, I want to kind of make this a thing, where if we have the week before an episode, if we have people reach out to us or leave a review somewhere, to draw some recognition to those people. So
Yeah.
I say we've got some great people on Twitter, but we also have some really awesome reviews that were left for us on the Apple Podcast app. And I think it would be kind of fun to highlight those this time, and then we'll do some of our Twitter followers next time, and we can just kind of see where it goes from there.
Yeah. Pay it forward with kindness.
Yeah. So I'm going to read out a few of these from the Apple Podcast reviews. We have a person by the name of Lucky Zeke. Says, left us a 5-star review. Says, a real lore podcast, everything I've been looking for. I guess as opposed to a fake lore podcast.
As well as thank you. Thank you for leaving us.
Thank you to all of these.
The kind words, the 5-star review, and you're welcome. Don't worry. You weren't the only one that was like, oh my God, can somebody just put this in a listenable format to where I can just throw it on in the background and listen to it work? That's
exactly
literally how this shit
here.
was born. Like this, our clanmates were like, hey, I want to listen to this during the week, do a thing. And so we were like, okay, done. So yeah.
And thus this was born.
Ta-da.
So we have another 5-star review, thank you, from Irish One Dan, who says, great podcast to learn more about Destiny lore. A additional 5-star review from a I'm going to butcher this, I'm sorry. NM Husinga? I'm sorry. Again.
Yeah. We'll just throw the apology there first. And then a thank you. Thank you for sticking with us this long.
Right. They say, started D2 a month before Witch Queen. This is a great podcast to learn the backstory of all things Destiny. Thank you very much. That's been our goal for a lot of this. That means a lot. I say, and the last one that we'll go over tonight, another 5-star from mcorv3 says, "Good listen for Destiny fans."
Yay!
So, thank you, everybody.
I like that people are able to find some sort of knowledge out of this. A lot of times it's just kind of us just reading lore entries and me getting all teary-eyed because Myth has such a beautiful speaking voice. But no, I'm glad that people can find some sort of joy out of this, and at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. We as much as we do this as a just a lore deep dive every week, to kind of satisfy our own little curiosities. We like to bring joy to the world, and I think the world could do with a little more joy. So for all of those that gave us some 5 stars, thank you, and even those that didn't leave a review, thank you. And just at the end of the day, pay it forward. Be kind to everyone. Be a nice person.
Absolutely. It means a lot to us to know that we're able to bring some entertainment and maybe some knowledge about the game that we all love and like to play. So yeah, thank you to everybody, those that left review, those that just listen. We appreciate you guys, and we'll continue to do some of these shout outs going forward, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know this was kind of a long one, but anything else, Myth?
I think we covered it.
All righty. Well, then, from all of us lore nerds to all of you guardians out there, we'll see you next week.